everyone, and welcome to your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom with me, Daniel Kennedy, your host, CEO of KML Group and Home Hug Limited and Steadfast Construction and Design, also Wealth Dragon Coach. Today, we're going to be discussing in episode 34, snagging and the importance of, and how to do it right, basically. So let me just share this to a few places and we shall crack on. That's where I've been this evening. I've been snagging at various little tiny bits at a job that we got going on, as I'm sure you've been following. I would hope anyway. We've got actually quite a lot of content lined up. We've had a lot of subjects to discuss and they've all sort of come to fruition very quickly. So the next couple of episodes should be a bit of a dynamite content, sorry. Right, that's that done. And I think we are good to go. Right, so let's begin. Hello team, and welcome to your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom with me, Daniel Kennedy, your host. Today we're going to be discussing snagging and how to do it right in episode 34 of your Wednesday dose of wealth wisdom. So what is snagging? Snagging is when you go around at the end of the job, when it's been presented as complete, finished, no more works need doing, you go around and you find what you're not happy with as the client or as the project manager, and you tell somebody to put it right. So what should a snagger do? Someone who snags should go around and they should test absolutely everything. So what you want to do is have basically a really keen eye for detail. If you don't find it at the end of the job and you don't bring it to the attention of the trades and you have to get them to come back, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get them back. So if you're doing it right, there should be a retention payment anyway. Most professional builders or professional firms will be sort of like hunting for that retention, normally that guaranteed payment at the end of a job. So how I do it, and I'm always testing and adjusting, but I quite like this. I've done lists, I've done sticky notes, and now we're sticking with sticky notes. And actually the team that we've got now, I'm really surprised at how little there was to do, because normally snagging is pages and pages and pages and pages of little things to do. But we've just gone round to snag the kitchen and one of the rooms because they're getting dressed, and there's so few points. It's really nice. And what you've got to remember, it isn't a case of you're going around and you're picking up the work that you don't like, because as builders, as trades, most of them have got tens of thousands of little jobs that they need to do on site, and most of that is done from memory. And people are human, right? They're gonna miss things. They're gonna get things not completely like fine-tuned and finesse as how you would. So it's really good to be empathetic with that situation. You don't want to be like, oh, this is shit, get it changed, blah blah blah, because they've done probably, out of the 10,000 little tiny jobs that they need to do, and the little screws and the paint and the beading and whatever, they've probably only missed about 100 jobs, or maybe even 50 jobs out of the whole range of jobs that some trades need to do. So see it on the side of you're just helping them along with that last 5 minutes, and how they do things might be a little bit different than how you want to see it. And having a sort of like change of mind at the end when you say you're not happy with this and you haven't told them how you like, it's very unrealistic, and it's not very fair if at the end of the job you suddenly decide to say, listen, I don't like it like this. You should have really been communicating throughout the job to make sure that it gets done. So go around with sticky notes and place, like, you have to be really meticulous. Place the sticky note on every single little defect and write what the defect is. This is quite a long way of doing things, and already after I've expressed how I do it, some people have come back to me with some good ideas, which I'm going to explore. But how I do it is I go around and I close every door, I lock the door, make sure it's smooth, open the door, close the door. Like, doors are a big thing, because if you don't get them right, it can be a pain, and it'll be the first thing tenants call you up about. you as a landlord will probably have much higher standards than tenants. So bearing in mind, thinking of your end user, you don't necessarily, everything doesn't need to be perfect. In my view, this is just my view, because you could spend double the amount of time in a job just getting everything perfect, and it's not really going to increase your rental income. The stuff that you want to be checking are the plugs. Do they all work? The lights, do they all work? Make sure the plugs are clean. Anything that's at eye level, you want to be pucker. Make sure the door closes, the handles lock, they don't rattle, they don't slam, for one thing. That's a real big problem with HMOs when doors slam. They're really, really easy to open and unlock, because if they're tight and they're not flush, and you know when the bolt goes across into the lock, or what, I don't know, whatever it's called, sometimes it can be really tight, and if you've got petite tenants, they can sometimes struggle with the door. So you want it to be like a smooth sliding motion, as if the bolt was on ice. Check all your skirting, just give it a little tap to make sure it hasn't come away, because when the carpets go down, sometimes it can get knocked, and it tends to only be grip filled on there, so it may need a bit of touching up. Make sure that all the taps are working, make sure there's no leaks, so run the taps for a while, have a good check. Make sure that you run the showers for a while, make sure there's no leaks on the shower screen. Like, you really need to go through absolutely everything, and you are going to miss things, because we're human, just like the trade. After the 10,000 little tiny jobs, they've done, say, 9,950 and missed 50 off them. You're going to miss some of the snags. So what you need to do is just make sure you get the important stuff right. And that is your leaks, that is your electrics, that's the lights and the doors. Make sure the skirting board is all sort of like nicely decorated and finished and corked. Make sure there's no gaps around the door. So a big one is the architrave, the stuff that you can't see on top. Very often that doesn't get corked. So, and why is that an issue? Well, what can happen, especially in a kitchen when it's hot and steamy, it means architrave is MDF normally, or it can be chip, whatever, and water can get behind its steam and it will blow. And you just want to really, really put sticky notes and pencil marks on the walls and create Site Audit Pro and send it on email, because the builder can remove the notes without doing the snags. Yeah, that's true. That's really good, actually, because potentially if you've got someone who's a bit of a pain, they can remove the notes and not do the job. So you might have to go and do. That's a really good point. But if you've got trust with your builders, which I know I have, hopefully that won't be an issue. But I didn't even think of that. Well done, Yavo. Thanks for that. Yeah, so make sure you get the important stuff right, and don't be in a place of like, oh, this is shit, this is crap, this is, because they've done an absolutely fantastic job to get that project to where it is now. You're at the snagging stage. All the hard stuff is done now. Now it's just getting it to how you like it, because 100% you could snag a job. They could completely finish every little tiny job of yours. I could go in and I would snag it, and I would find a dozen things as well. Same for if you were to come onto our site, you would find a dozen things. So have your end user in mind. Does the tenant care that the fact that I don't know, maybe the handle isn't completely and totally like laser straight? It should be, but perhaps it isn't. Or does the tenant care that maybe the battens under the kitchen worktop aren't painted white? No, they don't give a damn. So have that in mind. Who will care is if you're doing this for other clients. If it's somebody's home, the standard has to be way, way higher than if you were renting, because tenants don't really care. It's good. Chances are it's going to get scratched, trashed, and the carpets are going to need to be replaced eventually. It's all just the nature of when you're letting. So try not to be emotionally attached to anything, because it's all going to get wrecked and eventually you're going to have to replace it all. But the idea is you hopefully get a good 15, 20 years of rental income with only having to touch up the room as opposed to completely redecorate it. Well, what we've done is we've gone for downpipe grey on all the gloss work, and we've sprayed it just to see how it is, and then we've painted white. So there's lots of sort of like bleeding with the sprayer, and so there's lots of lines that need to be done. But it's something that can be brought to attention to the builders, and it can be done with a bit of frog tape. So make sure you're meticulous. Make sure you check your electrics. Make sure you have the heating running, the water running. You check all for leaks. and you're really meticulous around the bathrooms. Make sure there's no leaks from the toilet, the sink, the shower screen. As I said, that's a real key area. Same for the kitchen. Make sure all the shelves go up is a big one, because very often they don't get put up. Make sure that your joins on your worktop have enough putty, especially around the sink, because that's a weak area. Worktops can last 10 years, they can last a year. It all depends on how good the joins are and if the putty is going to stop the water getting in, because once they've blown, they look awful and they need replacing. Although worktops aren't that expensive in the grand scheme of things, you don't really want to be replacing them every 2 years. You want to have a good 5 to 10 years life out the kitchen, and that's really doable if the worktops are done like pucker and they've got the what they call colour fill in between the joints. Make sure that's a real sort of like key area. Make sure you've got silicone around the sink and silicone around the oven as well. And make sure your silicone in your bathroom is all done, because what happens eventually, once caulk goes on as well, and the heat gets put into the property, everything shrinks, everything cracks. And that isn't because you've got bad trays. That's just how it is. It's full of water, it's cold. When the heating goes on, it contracts, and sometimes it needs a bit touching up. And what will happen as well, you'll have 5 or 6 guys on your site snagging, and at the end of the day, it will look exactly the same as if it was in the morning. It's very like this last stage, it looks like nothing has been done, but there's so many, like, I cannot under emphasize how long it takes to do the small snaggly jobs, because when you've done a stud wall, you see it, it's like boom, it's up. But when you've maybe like sanded a bit of paint where there's been too much paint on the wall, so it's sort of like drip down the wall and you can see it, and that needs sanding and then repainting, you don't see it, you don't notice it. So just bear that in mind. You're not going to have huge leaps of progress, and snagging is really only done to your taste. If you're renting, like, you could pretty much rent it a week before snagging. Snagging doesn't really need to get done as long as there's no leaks and everything closes and works. Snagging is purely an egotistical and vanity thing, that you want to supply that sort of product. So just recognize that and make sure you know that the trade-off is less rental income, less more mortgage payments because your rooms are empty, when in reality tenants are probably moving to it how it is now. Right, that's all I've got to say on snagging. Something that needs to be done. You need to get in the habit of it, and you need to be careful how you pick things up, because potentially, if you're a bit of a knob about it, you could offend the trades. If you're like, oh, this is crap, this is crap, this is, as opposed to saying, please make good, make good. And most trades know about snagging. Everyone knows about snagging. They shouldn't take it personally if you're not a knob about it. And that's all. Right. Thank you for joining us. And next week, because my whole sort of outlook on planning has completely changed, because basically I've made a pig's ear of everything that I've done. We've really sort of like ramped it up and taken it to the more professional stage and got more consultants involved. So I'm going to do a lesson on planning consultancy and how to get stuff through planning, with the caveat I've got nothing through planning using this method, but this is how we're going to get the big stuff through planning, I'm told. So I'm just going to update what I said on the previous episode. So join me next Wednesday for how to get stuff through planning, and have your questions ready, because it's a big subject and I've learned a lot more quite recently. Right, thank you for your time and enjoy your evening.